Dear Democracy participants, welcome back to Just Another Vision Sprint. We invited and asked Nashra Balagamwala, who is an experimental and game designer originally from Pakistan, to describe one ideal day in her life 2035. Nashra did that and gave the lines back to us, and we gave it to Leo Leowald, who put her stories into pictures. You will see now the video showing one ideal day in Nashra's life 2035, followed by breakout groups and then by an official reflection with Emilia Roig. Please enjoy.
Hi everyone, my name is Nashra Balagamwala and this is a day in my life in 2035. I start off the day with my morning ritual, cooking a perfect cup of chai. While technology has advanced, machines now exist that perfectly replicate roadside tea, and society is no longer calling it chai tea latte, which translates to tea milk. I still do it manually. Watching the tea leaves steep in the pot, the milk simmer and reach a perfect golden brown color makes me feel grounded. The aroma of cardamom mixed with black tea is a soothing sensation, and it prepares me to take on the rest of the day. Meanwhile, my daughter Sophie runs around the house wearing a cape made out of her bedsheet. She playfully ties an apron on her brother Niall and hands him a broom. We don't conform to gender stereotypes in this house, and he usually takes it in stride. Today, however, he seems irritable. I can sense that he is holding something back. I question why his reaction is negative and learn that earlier this week, he showed some vulnerability in his classroom. While we have an equitable environment in our house, the world isn't quite as unprejudiced. His expression of emotions was followed by the boys calling him a sissy and excluding him from games. I see the narrative of boys can't cry slowly creeping into his personality. It terrifies me. I want my boys to be able to cry. I want them to express their feelings in the same way a woman can. I want them to know that anger and aggression is never a solution. Yet I sense his anger. I see the beginnings of what could be toxic masculinity. I realize it's time to leverage my career. The children have always been fascinated by my profession. While career day at school allows them to step into a virtual space, select a job, and live through a simulation of it, game designer does not exist as an option. I hop up and say, "All right, kiddos, who's in the mood to make a game?" They jump up in excitement, and I immediately have their undivided attention. To prototype this game, we select our tools and materials on an app, and a hologram of those items is subsequently projected into the space. We then manually move or alter the virtual dice, markers, and movers, an experience that is tactile and retains the nature of board games, while making it possible to play in any space or time. They're completely engrossed by the holographic images, and I start to channel their attention into a game. Sophie yells out provocative sentences, and the game provides cues for Niall to respond appropriately. It creates a space for us to have an in-depth conversation about gender dynamics. Sophie then asks when one of our games will be strong enough to make it to the market and summons her father. My partner, let's call him John Smith so as to not stir up too much speculation, serves as our playtester and makes the judgment call as to whether or not we should pursue it further. Later that afternoon, wearing my self-driving rollerblades, I make my way over to a weekly meeting with a community of women dedicated to changing the mindset of the youth. These women serve as my allies. During our meeting, we deliberate over what our ideal world would be and how to effectively change behaviors and mindsets. Our conversation today revolves around Gen Z, who are now young adults, and the impacts of growing up in the TikTok generation are glaringly obvious. 15 years ago, this generation was preoccupied with likes and views. Now, living in an era where microchip implants are a primary form of communication, their need for social validation has become dangerous. They are often caught in a daze, finding it difficult to communicate through words rather than emojis and song lyrics. Our group creates a plan to focus efforts on rehabilitating the mindset of this generation. We will start by introducing poetry and prose into their lives. The discussion seems fruitful, and I head towards my studio, feeling optimistic. My studio is my sanctuary. It provides a bird's eye view of all my contrasting yet collective interests. A corner splattered with paint across the walls and floor serves as my workstation. On the opposite end, a corner decorated with bamboo sticks and candles is a place for meditation. The other two sides consist of a digital workstation and prototyping area. The room is filled with games and toys, serving as my inspiration of finding the silly in the serious. The evening provides time for reflection. Sitting in the meditative corner, with another cup of chai, of course, I start to ponder over how our world has changed in the past 2 decades. Individualism led to our downfall and left a lasting impact on our hearts and minds. Our bipartisan world, be it in regards to climate change, policy, religion, feminism, or what have you, led us to a point of self-destruction. The left and right had never been further apart. Yet accountability and collective living were crucial for our survival. It was from these extremes that a group called Centrist Citizens was formed. The group aimed to bridge the divide between conservatives and liberals, unify their vision, and co-create a global democratic future. Today, their vision doesn't seem so far-fledged. What initially started as a plan to bring together the Indian subcontinent, form a union that would not only decrease political tension, but also economically empower all 6 countries, led to something much bigger. Today, we await the results of the Eastern Trade Union. Consisting of several member states from the Middle East and Asia, the union will allow for free movement of people and goods. As an active member of the group, I anxiously await the results of the election. To keep myself distracted, I spend the evening putting the final touches on a co-created virtual installation, a beautiful work of art that was created by the left and right coming together. I started with something simple, a drawing. More specifically, hundreds of thousands of collective drawings. Based on a prompt, I asked participants to submit a drawing, which was matched with other submissions. Facets of each of these drawings were then used to create entirely different pieces of work. As a public space artist, my goal in life is to create communities where there are none. Seeing these drawings come together in a synergetic manner enthralls me. I hope that it will provide a foundation for relationships to foster and conversations to begin. Later at night, John and I sit in our living room, awaiting the results of the union, a treaty that will exponentially decrease the risk of a nuclear war. My body is filled with all kinds of emotions. I cannot take the suspense any longer and dial in the rest of the members of the alliance. An augmented reality experience brings us all into the same space, and we watch as the results are tallied. Moments later, we hear the news anchor say, "The union is close to being actualized. It is the beginning of a new world."
Dear Democracy participants, we will send you now once again into breakout groups to give you a little bit of time to reflect upon what you heard in the vision sprint by Nashra. The question we would like to give you for your breakout group is, what are your initial thoughts after hearing the input? Has it made you think differently about the future? We will be back here in round about 15 minutes. Hello and welcome back from the Breakout groups. We have all watched the vision sprint by Nashra Balagamwala, who's an experimental and game designer. For the reflection to this vision sprint, we have invited a person who is, to me, very inspirational, which is Emilia Roig. She's the founder and the director of the Center for Intersectional Justice. The Center for Intersectional Justice is a Berlin-based organization combating intersecting forms of discrimination. And we are very thankful, Emilia, that you take the time to be with us and to share with us your thoughts now on the vision sprint of Nashra. After some while, Nashra will join you in this conversation, and in the very end, I am happy to come in and bring in the question from the audience. Please enjoy, and I'd say, Emilia, the screen is all yours.
Thank you so much, Paulina, for the kind introduction. I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really inspired as well by the format that you have chosen, because as we were saying before, during the breakout rooms, we often underestimate the power of imagination. And I think manifesting a life that is more loving, more inclusive, and also more just requires for us to imagine it first. And we tend to be caught in reaction. It means that we react to the world as we see it. We react to the injustice. We react to visions or words or representations that we deem to be inappropriate, that we deem to be discriminatory, that we deem to be wrong. But we do not take this energy to imagine a new future. So that's why, Najwa, thank you so much for doing this. And I've really enjoyed your vision sprint. What I saw from the beginning, I mean, there are different themes that came out. The first one is grounding. You drinking your tea in a meditative way. And also, what I really liked is that you put a hint of a critique of Eurocentrism, saying that you don't say chai tea, you say tea, or you say chai. And I really liked it because it shows that a lot of the words that we use are really rooted in a European perspective, in the language, in the English language, or in at least European languages. So I really like that. The second, what I saw was, of course, trying to confront gender stereotypes, and in the way you approached it, you really made the difference between home and between the outside. So how do you do as a parent and as a person to change your inner world, but also still be confronted with the outside and a world that is not changing as fast as you want it to change? So I'm confronted with the same issue because I have a son who's turning 6-year-old tomorrow. And at home, there are so many values and so many things that I want to convey to him, and also, empower him to feel his emotions and to be the full human being that he can be without being restricted by patriarchal norms. And at the same time, the outside world is so powerful that sometimes I feel very hopeless and very helpless in the face of this world, and which continue to convey patriarchal norms and patriarchal values to our children. So I really like that, looking at the home versus outside and what dismantling a system actually entails for us. It means that we constantly have to negotiate this home and outside. Also, as part of the gender reflection that you made about toxic masculinity and expressing feelings, to me, it really intersects with the spiritual perspective that you shed on this vision sprint. Not only through the grounding at the beginning, but also you spoke about the meditative space that you have in your home, and about the reflection, and about taking the time, and letting feelings be, accepting feelings and embracing feelings, and at the same time, understanding that feelings are what constitutes us as human beings as well, and that we need to give them more space. Many times, especially when dealing with difficult societal issues, we tend to want to repress feelings, to not recognize them, because we see them as interfering with, the situation, or maybe preventing us from coping. And actually, that's the opposite. A coping mechanism is to prevent and repress our feelings. And I like that you talked about that, because toxic masculinity is driven, or at least the root of toxic masculinity is rejecting feelings, or at least having the societal pressure of rejecting certain feelings that are considered to be inferior. Only certain feelings that are considered to be superior, and they are what constitutes us. All of us have anger, aggression, frustration as feelings, but also love and empathy and connection and care. And in our society, those two different clusters of feelings have been attributed to certain genders. And so anger, assertiveness, aggression have been attributed to male gender, and the other ones, the more empathic, caring characteristics, to the female gender. And so in order to overcome patriarchy, in order to overcome a society which continues to value the masculine and to denigrate the feminine, we have to integrate those feelings and also understand that they have no gender. So I think this is it for the gender thoughts that you shared with us. And I like that you included the new generation, because they are so instrumental and so important in dismantling systems that are preventing us from deploying our full selves and living a life of connection. Which brings me to the next topic of your vision sprint, which is the connection of humanity. Maybe a lost unity, something that needs to be recovered. I don't know if it's maybe romanticizing the past, like a very distant past that we can't even, maybe the time when we were still in prehistorical times, where we had unity and we somehow lost it. And so I liked this idea of, the conservative voices. So you divided the world into two camps, and it doesn't have to be liberals and conservatives. It can be anything polarizing. It can be any different views of humanity, any axis that divide humanity currently. And of course, the one we can think of right now, especially just before the election in the US, which is, I think, an event which very much embodies this polarization from a political standpoint. But it's really about uniting humanity and trying to find ways to speak to each other, creating, you said bridging the divide, and collective living. And what was there as well as a word that I noted down? I think, collective living, bridging the divide. And this, like at the end, trying to find a way to come together. So we could use it. I think we're in the process of coming together. We talked about it as well during the break, and that's the idea of, we have everything in our hands to imagine the future. And what we do is we imagine dystopian futures. We imagine a catastrophe. We imagine a very bleak outcome of everything that's happening right now, when we could actually see it as a sign that we are moving towards a better world, simply because there is so much resistance and human beings hate change. We all know that. I mean, for example, I personally, when there's a new interface on an app, my first reaction is like, oh no, they changed the app. Oh, I don't like it. And so I need to have time to just really adjust to it. And that's just a very small example, but human beings are not programmed for change. We hold on to what we know. And so anything that diverges from what our mental image has created for us is a tremendous challenge. So we need to really overcome the first feelings of fear and of rejection, of change, to embrace what could be. And this means that we have to let go to a certain extent. We have to let go of what we know. We have to let go of expectations. We have to let go of fears, of course. And this last image of waiting for the decision and the vote to see, are we going to reach that future, I think is also showing the intersection of anxiety and on the other hand as well, trust maybe and hope. And that's why all those emotions are cohabitating. There's not a space where only have hope or only have anxiety. I think they are co-creative of each other, and we just need to tame them in order to unleash the best vision for ourselves. There is also something you said about rehabilitating the mindset of the new generations, which are no longer able to imagine or to communicate and to live outside of the digital world and the social media world. And I think it's definitely something that is preoccupying. At the same time, we have the tremendous ability as human beings to adapt and to adapt, but still, nevertheless, I think that's the point where I'd like to discuss with you what you envision or what the big challenges we're facing in this regard. And I think to finish this, I'd like to also say about the divide and bridging the differences and the divergence, that we need to also live in a world where difference is seen as something positive. So we have a discourse, especially the discourse around diversity, the discourse around inclusion, that frames difference as something positive. But most of the time, what we want when we think of unity in humanity, we many times confuse it with homogeneity. And that's very dangerous, because we do not want a homogeneous world. We want a world where we can be different, respected, and valued. And so far, I mean, of course, that's why I'm also very worried about people who would say we need to embrace all opinions and accept all opinions. I agree that we need to be open and we need to listen to each other. But sometimes certain opinions are more than opinions. Certain opinions are infringing on the rights and freedom and also humanity and dignity of other people. And those opinions should not be considered on an equal footage as other opinions which do not do the same, meaning which do not devalue and dehumanize people. And this is where we need to be wise, and we need to be able to make the difference between welcoming in our democratic discourse ideas which have led as well to genocides in the past. And I think it's important to really understand that this is not something that we can brush from the back of the hand, we would say in French, but that it's more something that we need to be collectively cautious about. And on that note, I would like to call you in to discuss about this and to see, when you said that you want conservatives, liberals, or whatever a polarization in society that exists, how do you envision this unity in difference? I think it's important to say unity in difference.
So first of all, I'm just realizing how much the US election has impacted what I wrote. It's clearly a big preoccupation because I'm saying liberals and conservatives, when in reality I meant any two people that are, at different ends of the spectrum and just uniting. So I agree that I absolutely agree that some opinions are, infringing upon the rights of many individuals and definitely cannot be implemented as solutions. However, I think again, this may be, where I'm at because of having lived in the US, but it feels the world is so partisan right now. There's just such polarity that one even understand the other, and it's almost as though they're speaking two completely different languages. You watch Fox News and then you watch BBC, and it's really telling you two completely different stories. And so where is that creating that space to understand the needs and opinions of one another and actually peacefully, with some sort of mutual respect, not impose your ideas on one or the other, but at least be able to have that conversation to move forward. I think that's where I was trying to go with it. Not that we're all the same. That's just not a world we're going to live in. That's a fact.
But how do you deal with power, with the issue of power, and the fact that it's sometimes difficult and challenging to look at ideas and opinions as being on an equal footage that produce the same outcomes. Now you have ideas which have a lot of power in our society, and others which don't, you know. And so how do you deal with the issue of power?
Well, I'll preface this with I'm super left wing, but I think I understand that to bridge that divide, maybe that person that has the power, maybe the person who is facilitating these conversations and discussions needs to be somewhat more in the middle, right? And only will that person be able to bridge that divide, I think, if there's any powerful source on either ends, and which is why there's such a big problem with the two-party system, is that one will fundamentally never be able to understand the other. So I don't think there should be one powerful person, you know, making decisions, but it needs to all be a facilitated conversation by someone who has obviously their own opinions, but not of one extreme or the other.
Mm-hmm. And I'd like to ask you about what you said about rehabilitating the mindset of the younger generations. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. So I watch my cousin's children these days, and it terrifies me. Their Instagrams and TikToks, they actually do not anymore. It's just emojis. It's, you know, I almost feel as though, even though I may be 12 or 14 years older than them, I'm able to have a conversation with any of them, compared to me and cousins who were 10, 12 years older than me. We still had a fairly good relationship. And I'm afraid, this is going back to the dystopian future. It's much easier to imagine that dystopian future because you're seeing an example of it right in front of you. I'm terrified, to be perfectly honest, that those will be potentially the future, if that generation ends up being the future doctors and engineers, because at this point, I don't see any of them forget being interested in academics, they cannot hold conversations as well. I think being stuck in, yes, humans are adaptable, to your point, but I think being in such a mindset can have long-lasting impacts. I even see people of my generation and how body positiveness is just gone, and because of social media, because of seeing those perfect images of bloggers that have been photoshopped, and that is creating just such an increase in depression, even in their generation. Those impacts don't just go away like that.
And
So,
do you see to what extent, the neoliberal logic is, or at least the social media culture, and, you're speaking about as well narcissism, I imagine, when talking about those images and the fact that individuals are taking up so much more space because of social media. How do you think it plays into neoliberal logics, and how to, at least, is there a way, in your opinion, in which we could use social media in order to turn the tide?
I think social media it's playing a very interesting role right now, because I think with activism, like with Black Lives Matter movement, so much of it gained traction because of social media. The women's marches, things like that, are all gaining. So I think social media can have its positivity. I just think currently the negatives are outweighing the positives. So I absolutely see a world where social media can be channeled into it, but fortunate as it sounds, the biggest influencers currently are actors, actresses who aren't really portraying the most body positive, messages. And I think it's in converting those people to it, because they have those big followings and needing to leverage them. If we got those to be our allies, we have a positive way forward.
Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to now go back to the spiritual, or to spirituality as a theme, which is it's not necessarily into religion. I want to make that clear for the audience. I'm not speaking about religion. I'm speaking about spirituality in a not dogmatic way, and really something that all humanity has in common, basically. And so since it's a thread in your vision sprint, I would like you to tell us more about it, and also to know what role do you think spirituality is going to play in the future?
So I think COVID has had a big impact on that. I was the kind of person where every moment of my calendar was planned out, when I'm going to when I'm going to eat, just weeks ahead of time. And then COVID hit, and for the first time my calendar had a break. And for the first time in months, like, I could actually breathe. I think that fundamentally changed the way I'm going to go about life. Everything need to happen at such a fast.
And sorry, I think we
Morning
lost you,
always
or
been.
maybe it's just.
Oh, hello?
No, okay. No, I think.
Am I
I
still
think
there?
it's back. Yeah,
Sorry.
but I
Yeah,
didn't hear
internet
the
here
last.
isn't. Yeah, internet here isn't great. I'll repeat myself. But with COVID hitting, my calendar finally had space in it and finally gave me some time to breathe. And it was in that moment that I realized I never wanted to go back to the extremely fast-paced life. While it's needed, but this year has been such a pivotal moment for me in terms of understanding myself, understanding my own needs, my family's needs, my, people in me, rather than just getting so focused on that 9 to 5 life. And it's, yeah, that space to breathe, that space to reflect it's showing on my body, it's showing on my face, it's mind. It's been amazing.
And more than just on a personal level, but more, talking about going back to bridging the divides, do you think spirituality could help us as well overcome the polarization and come back to an idea of unity, which all religions as well, I mean, even if we're not necessarily speaking about religion, but at least the core of spiritual practice is also to find unity and to find connection with other living beings and also with the whole universe. Do you think this is something that could that will play an important role, this image, or at least the principle of unity that is present in spirituality? And if yes, how?
I think it's crucial. I think it's crucial. I think so much of what we think is influenced by media, by social media, and or even just the world around us. And when a lot of those messages around us are negative, our thoughts towards one another are bound to become negative. I think when we actually say what is important for us, at the core of it, I believe that people are good. At least, maybe I'm too much of an optimist, but I think as we sit with ourselves, there's so much space for love and care for the rest of the world. And when we remove ourselves from what the world has told us and actually focus on what's important, so I think it's crucial to do that, to bridge that divide.
Okay. I think I'd like to see and quickly check if there are questions coming from the audience, because we have a bit more than 10 minutes, and I think it would be nice to engage on a conversation. If not, I have many more questions for you, but I just wanted to quickly see.
That is lovely. Thank you, Emilia. Actually, there are 2 questions, one to Emilia, one to Nashra, and I would love to read them out to you. So, Emilia, the first question goes to you, and it says, can you give a practical example of the difference between unity and homogeneity? Can you think of something like a best practice where the value of difference and diversity on the one hand and integration and unity on the other are being brought together?
Okay, I really like this question. So I want to say that unity and homogeneity. So homogeneity would be a world where, or at least a process in which, in order to reach unity, we try to erase difference. And that's something that is continuously being done today as well. For example, by saying we need to be united. So that's why identity politics or movements such as Black Lives Matter or Me Too movement are polarizing and are divisive. So this would be at least a process where we try to erase difference in order to reach unity. Another process, which I deem to be more effective in reaching unity and peace, is to be able to recognize differences and to understand that some groups need to assert difference or to reclaim difference, which has been created as inferior. And so that's why, in that sense, it's absolutely crucial to never disconnect difference from hierarchy. It means that the Black Lives Matter movement needs to exist because Black people have been defined and constructed and represented as inferior to white people. So this is why we need Black Lives Matter. And also, there are very tangible results to this type of representation of inferiority, meaning systemic discrimination, lack of access, police violence, state violence more generally. And then that's the same with Me Too. Women and non-binary people, LGBTQI people need to assert their difference, and they need to have identity politics based on gender difference, simply because so far anything that is not heterosexual, anything that is not male, anything that is not responding to the gender binary has been cast as inferior or as deviant, from a normative standpoint. And that's why difference can be incorporated in unity if differences are recognized but hierarchies are dismantled. So it means it's not about saying, men and women and every human beings are the same, or, black, white, purple, yellow, it doesn't matter, but it's more about really confronting the hierarchy in order to embrace difference. And about the best practice, I don't think we have the time to do it now, but it's a mindset, it's a paradigmatic shift of valuing difference and dismantling hierarchies.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you very much for this interesting answer. Nashra, I've got two questions here for you. The first one actually connects to what we've just heard. It says, what could be a unifying idea to overcome the polarization in the US society you just described? That's a tough one, I know, but maybe there's something in your mind.
I wish I had an answer to that, but let me think on it for a second.
Yes.
I think if we had an answer to that, we'd be in a much better place in the world right now.
Definitely. I mean, maybe
let me ponder over that.
Okay. No, I'm happy to give you time. There's a second question I could ask you, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. As an experiential designer, which you are, what can games and playing teach us about living together peacefully and open-mindedly communicating with each other?
So I think games provide an incredible medium to do it. I think I speak about board games, not games. I'm not in that world. But I think for a lot of people that I know, playing a board game together can be an intimate experience. It can be one where you truly get to know one another. It can be anything. It can go from like a family fight over to, Cards Against Humanity, which probably not the best thing to bring up right now, but it's just, they provide a space for pretty open, honest conversations. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the best ways I've gotten to know people is through a game, as strange as it sounds, but I think then discussing why people react the way they do gives you a pretty good insight into their personalities. And so I think, especially in a world that is more and more digitized, in a world that is more and more isolated, it's so important to facilitate those spaces for it. And was there a second part to that question?
Well, it was about how they can, but you already elaborated on that a little bit. I mean, how this gaming could actually help us to live together more peacefully and communicate in a better way. But you already said, right, that it's about, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's about understanding emotions through it. I think also games are a great opportunity, and now it's starting to happen where people are bringing up some of these more pressing topics through game. There was recently a game that was a version, Equilopoly or something. I'm forgetting the exact name of it. Essentially based off the Monopoly board, and it's teaching about race and how, just racial biases that take charge and how people are prevented from succeeding. So I think more and more games are going towards a direction of educating and creating peace.
That's amazing. At this point, I would love to mention that everybody who's watching, please check out Nashra's website, because she is designing wonderful games, and you can look them up in the internet and learn about them. And they're really, really interesting and very different to Monopoly and all the regular stuff we know. There is just another question to Emilia, which I would like to pose. So it says, I found it really interesting when you talked about the different spheres of home and public life in your reflection on gender stereotypes. This might be a personal question. If your son were in the predicament Nashra's imaginative son found himself in, what advice would you give him? Did you get that, even though I read it out so badly?
It's okay. I think I understood it. So yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. I think he's dealing with internal conflicts of, wanting to be accepted and also wanting to be recognized in his identity. And I think that's what a lot of little boys are living. It means that in order to be seen and in order to be considered as little human beings, they have to conform. And so he used to have really long hair, and his favorite color used to be pink, and he used to wear nail polish sometimes, and at the same time always play with trucks and the gender conforming little boys games. So in inverted commas, of course, because they are not boy games, but this is how it works. And and so he has moments where he feels. And he told me, look, I want to cut my hair because everybody thinks I'm a girl. And I told him, yes, but, people make mistakes. Why don't you say that you're a boy? And that's it. It's like sometimes people may think that your name is Sebastian, and then you say, no, my name is Tibian. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, yeah, and then it worked for a bit, and then it started to be something that he wanted to do. And of course, it broke my heart so bad, but I did cut his hair. Because I didn't want to impose anything on him, and he's not like that in and of himself, this mental patriarchy. So I cut his hair, and now he wants to let it grow back. I guess he needed to make the experiment of knowing deep inside what it's like to have to conform and then decide for himself. And I think it's something that kids change with time, and they need to identify. So I work a lot with identification. I see that. For example, having role models. So he's taking, for example, a drags workshop now, which is taking place at a cultural center here in Berlin, and that's really nice because he's exposed to very different ways of living gender, and that's it's opening up a lot of possibilities for him. And I think that's what little boys need. They need possibilities. They need a lot of. They need to get out of the social prison in which they are imprisoned from a very early age on.
Yeah. Nashra, would you like to comment on that?
If we're not at time,
the session? Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say we're not at. I can go back to that first question.
Please.
Probably not the best idea, but the one that I can think of at the top of my head. I almost wonder if it's a moment of finding allies through something similar, maybe to speed dating, where it's people from the two ends, maybe not the two extremes, but slightly more towards the moderate center, coming together and kind of having a speed dating type conversation where they, explain their views. And through that, then the moderates going a little bit more towards either side and having those. I think we just need to open up a space for conversations. That seems like it's really lacking.
I think we really learned that from the both of you in various examples. Thank you very much. And Nashra, what you just described exists, at least in Germany, it's called Diskutier mit mir, but I think it also exists in other countries and other languages. I have to check it out and send you an email to let you know. However, at this point, I would like to close this session and thank Emilia a lot for the reflection on Nashra's Vision Sprint. I really enjoyed that. For everybody who's watching in the Zoom session, please do give us an evaluation. The link will be posted in the chat now, and it helps us a lot to understand if you like what we are doing, because you are just not sitting with me in this beautiful room here and I cannot see your faces to tell if you like Inocracy or what we could do better. We will go into a break of 30 minutes now and then come back at 3 p.m. Central European Time for a session with the title The Future of Migration: Envisioning a Just European Asylum Policy. The session will be held as a conversation between Gerald Knaus, who's the chairman of European Stability Initiative, and Sophie Maganis, who's the head of policy and legal support at the UNHCR. In the reflection, you will hear Erich Marquardt, an MEP, and Maria Caldani, head of Human Department Child Protection Unit at the Home Project. Thank you very much for being with us in this Vision Sprint at Inocracy on the last day, and goodbye.